In the early 1940s, Tierney was pregnant with her first daughter, Daria, and volunteering at the Hollywood Canteen when a sick fan broke the quarantine and came up close to her. This one small incident had truly devastating consequences. Tierney got infected and passed it on to Daria, who was born deaf, partially blind, and mentally disabled. The tragedy would torment Tierney all her life. Put on that Marabou dressing robe and listen to these 42 facts about the Hollywood Get Girl. Gene Tierney was a New York girl in name, though not exactly in practice. Born on November 19, 1920 in Brooklyn, Tierney's father was a wealthy insurance broker, and her mother was a gym teacher. Tierney's parents named her Jean, after one of her beloved uncles who had died prematurely. The Tierney family ended up settling in Westport, Connecticut, which, let's just say, was more than a little hoity-toity. At the height of her fame, Tierney was fittingly nicknamed the Get Girl. After all, Get were the initials of her full name, and she always got what she wanted. When Tierney first started acting, the wealthy, ultra-creepy, Hollywood-eccentric Howard Hughes made a pass at the young actress, but he got so much more than he bargained for. Tierney was used to luxury, and Hughes's immense wealth neither intimidated nor attracted her. She turned him down, but they did become lifelong friends. Tierney's best-known role was in Otto Preminger's Laura. Though the film was a critical success, the production was notoriously troubled, with the movie even going through two directors. The first, Ruben Mamoulian, was very hands-off with Tierney, and the still green actress often had to fend for herself on the bustling film set. Tierney's adolescence was full of all the high society stereotypes. She attended an international school in Switzerland for 2 years, where she learned French and mingled with other young ladies of her rank. When she came back stateside, she then enrolled in Miss Porter's school, a prep school with alumni like Gloria Vanderbilt and Princess Anastasia of Greece and Denmark. Despite her mega beauty, Tierney suffered from one key weakness: low self-esteem. After the screening of her first film, she was horrified at the squeaky sound of her voice and thought she sounded like an angry Minnie Mouse. In order to lower her not-so-dulcet tones, she decided to take up a hard smoking habit for nearly the rest of her life. When Tierney met Russian-Italian fashion designer Ole Cassini, she was immediately smitten with the dapper aesthete. Her family, however, had other ideas. They were deeply disapproving of the love match and forced Tierney to make a desperate choice. In June of 1941, the good girl gone bad risked their fury and eloped with Cassini. Some people struggle for years and years, hoping for that one big break that will get them into Tinseltown. Not Tierney. On a family trip to the West Coast, the Tierney clan checked out the Warner Bros. Lot to visit a relative. While they were there, Anatole Litvik spotted the teenage beauty and told her she should go into acting. Though Warner Bros. Studios desperately wanted to sign Tierney to a contract when she was only 17 years old, her well-to-do parents had other ideas. They sniffed at the low Hollywood salary and tried to discourage her from acting. The Tierney elders thought their debutante daughter had much better prospects in her life than shilling it for the silver screen. Tierney continues to have fans today. Legendary director Martin Scorsese named her movie Leave Her to Heaven as one of his absolute favorite films, and he considers Tierney one of the most underrated actresses of her day. When Tierney started acting, her parents insisted that she take to the stage before she tried her hand at the camera. And so, Tierney booked her first role, the slightly uninspiring part of a water carrier. But even though all she did was carry a jug of water, Tierney still managed to make an impression. One critic raved, "Miss Tierney is certainly the most beautiful water carrier I've ever seen." Tierney and Cassini had 2 daughters together, Antoinette Daria and Christina. But as you'll see, it was far from happily ever after. For Tierney, lightning did really strike twice. One day, 20th Century Fox head honcho Daryl F. Zanuck saw her in a Broadway performance and, impressed at her star power, turned to his assistant and asked them to note her name. Later that night, Zanuck saw a beautiful woman on the dance floor of a club and told his aide, "Forget the girl from the play. See if you can sign that one. Except that girl was Tierney. She was just that good. Although Tierney's parents were initially reluctant to let her get into acting, they were more than supportive when her career kicked into overdrive. And by supportive, I definitely mean that they put their money where their mouths were. Tierney's father even opened up his own corporation, Beltier, to promote his daughter's career. Tierney's turn as Ellen Brent in the acclaimed film Leave Her to Heaven snagged her an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress in 1946. Fox head Daryl Zanuck once called Tierney the most beautiful woman in movie history. It wasn't all glitz and glamour at the beginning of Tierney's career, however. One day on the set of a film, a cameraman took it upon himself to tell the young actress that she needed to lose weight. Like anyone with feelings, Tierney took it to heart in a big way. She wrote to Harper's Bazaar asking for diet tips, and when they responded, she kept the regime for 25 years. As a leading lady with high society roots, it's no surprise that Tierney had some very high-profile romances. But one dalliance outdid them all. In the 1950s, Tierney got herself into a whirlwind romance with none other than Prince Ali Khan, who also just so happened to be Rita Hayworth's ex-husband. The pair even wanted to get married, but they were doomed to a heartbreaking end. Prince Ali's father, Aga Khan III, forbade the match, and Tierney had to return to Hollywood with her hands empty. On September 24, 1938, Tierney made her formal society introduction as a debutante. She was 17 years old, which is a totally perfect age to announce to the world, "I'm ready for marriage." When she was just starting out as an actress, Tierney almost went with MGM Studios, since they were offering her a role in the much-anticipated film National Velvet. When the part fell through, she shaped much of her life by making the decision to go with 20th Century Fox. The actress was a legendary shapeshifter, and she could take on any number of looks depending on her hair, makeup, and costuming. As she once said, "I always had several different looks, a quality that proved useful in my career." Tierney was painfully conscious of her supposedly protruding front teeth, and she often shaped her lipstick to try to camouflage them. As she once confessed in a 1948 interview, "I talk out of the side of my mouth in order to not show my teeth." Thankfully, even the infamously image-conscious Fox Studios liked her pearly whites and refused to let her cosmetically change them. Tierney hid a world of tragedy behind her sophisticated facade. She battled for years with manic depression, an illness that her tumultuous personal life did nothing to help. As her mental health got worse, jobs also became more and more difficult. She often lacked concentration and even had to drop out of her film, Mogambo. To make matters worse, Grace Kelly took over Tierney's part and then won a Golden Globe for the performance. Starting in the 1950s, Tierney admitted herself into a series of mental institutions. While there, she underwent ghastly shock therapy treatments to try to correct her depression. She grew to despise these procedures and took desperate measures to avoid them. She actually escaped her asylum once, though attendants quickly caught her and returned her. Throughout her hard times, screen legend Humphrey Bogart was one of Tierney's fiercest allies on set, but his compassion was because of a dark family secret. His own sister had suffered from mental instability, so whenever Tierney started losing her concentration or forgetting her lines, which was often, Bogart would always make sure to help her out and treat her with patience. He even encouraged her to seek professional help. In the late 1950s, Tierney's depression had all but driven her from Hollywood, and she even took up a normal job as a sales clerk to try to ease herself back into society. Sadly, it all went so wrong. A customer recognized her famously beautiful face, and the ruthless media descended with reams of stories about the troubled starlet's fall from grace. The tragic circumstance of Tierney's firstborn Daria became a prominent plot point in Agatha Christie's The Mirror Cracked from Side to Side. In 1946, Tierney and her husband Cassini separated, and while the Hollywood beauty might have been grief-stricken, she rebounded in a major way. While acting as a free agent, Tierney entertained affairs with the likes of Kirk Douglas and John F. Kennedy. Tierney's steamy affair with John F. Kennedy went on for months, only to end in bitterness. The actress was deeply devoted to the handsome young man, but then Kennedy dealt her a heartbreaking betrayal. He informed her that he had political ambitions and would never, ever marry her. A crushed Tierney called the whole thing off. On Christmas Day in 1957, Tierney's fragile health caught up to her in the worst way possible. The troubled actress stepped onto the roof of her mother's apartment in Manhattan and stared down at the 14-story drop, contemplating her end. Tierney's frantic family called the police, and after 20 minutes, she thankfully stepped back inside. In the 1960s, Gene Tierney attempted a Hollywood comeback, but the results were shaky at best. She starred in some critically acclaimed roles like Jane Barton in The Pleasure Seekers, but ultimately found herself slipping back into old anxieties. After 1969, she all but retired from acting. Gene Tierney wasn't one to hold a grudge. When her former beau, John F. Kennedy, got elected President of the United States, her response was heartbreaking. Tierney sent him a personal note of congratulations. In 1958, Gene Tierney met her second and final husband, W. Howard Lee, a filthy rich oil baron from Texas. Lee had just gone through an agonizing divorce with screen siren and brilliant scientist Hedy Lamarr, and he and the Hollywood-worn Tierney suited each other just fine. The pair lived a secluded lifestyle together until his death in 1981. In 1960, Tierney discovered she was pregnant again while in the middle of planning a comeback in the film Return to Peyton Place. Sadly, tragedy struck, leading Tierney to withdraw from the movie and retreat back into her reclusive lifestyle. Tierney suffered a miscarriage and felt that she couldn't make a movie so soon after her heartbreak. Maybe Tierney wasn't so forgiving of old John F. Kennedy. In 1960, she voted for Richard Nixon instead of her ex. In fact, Tierney was a staunch Republican. I guess crossing the aisle was more of a bedroom deal. On November 6, 1991, just days away from her 71st birthday, Tierney passed away in Houston, Texas. That lifelong smoking habit caught up with her. She died of emphysema. One of Tierney's first starring roles was in the comedic film Heaven Can Wait, but her time on set was an absolute nightmare. The director used to scream constantly at her, and she spent the production on the verge of tears. When she told him she had enough and she'd leave if he kept shouting, his response was disturbing. "I'm paid to shout at you," he yelled. Luckily, Tierney wasn't fazed. She replied coolly, "And I'm paid to take it, but not enough." Apparently, after a tense moment, the director burst into laughter, and they got along famously after that. In the 1940s, Tierney was pregnant with her first daughter, Daria, and volunteering at the Hollywood canteen when a sick fan broke the quarantine and came up close to her. This one small incident had utterly devastating consequences. Tierney got infected and passed it on to Daria, who was then born deaf, partially blind, and mentally disabled. The tragedy would torment Tierney all her life. Tierney's devoted friend, Howard Hughes, paid for all of her daughter Daria's medical expenses, making sure she received state-of-the-art care. Though Tierney was always grateful for Howard Hughes' friendship, especially after the traumatic birth of her daughter Daria, that didn't mean she minced words when it came to the notorious Lothario and lover of planes. As she once said of him, "I don't think Howard could love anything that didn't have a motor in it." Best friends can say stuff like that to each other. Despite her fame and the glamorous veneer of Hollywood, Gene Tierney's life was far from the fairy tale it appeared to be. Behind her striking beauty and captivating performances lay a woman who endured tremendous personal hardships. The tragic birth of her daughter Daria, brought on by a simple yet devastating encounter, cast a long shadow over her life. Tierney's struggles with mental health only added to her challenges, leading her to withdraw from the spotlight she once commanded. Yet through it all, she remained a figure of grace and resilience, admired not just for her screen presence, but for her ability to persevere. Her story is a poignant reminder of the price of fame and the strength required to endure life's darkest moments.